the Sports Shop on Buzz Sports Radio.
Distro.
Good morning.
What's up, Dr. Stroman? How you doing?
Good morning, good people. How's everyone?
Doing
We are
great.
doing wonderful. Yeah, absolutely
Excellent,
outstanding.
excellent.
I recovered from last week's grade, so I'm good.
Very good. Well, I'll have to say I'm a bit like Errol in not keeping up with all these relationships and who's
Thank you.
Spending time with
Thank
whom
you.
and
Thank you.
all of that. So thank you, K-Mac and the firm for updating me on this stuff.
Me too.
I don't know if it's something that I needed to know, but it's kind of nice to hear it.
I was just highlighting the relatives, who was related to who. That's all.
Okay, I don't know if I need to keep that in my portfolio, but I guess it's good for a good bar and game chatter.
There you
right?
go. There you go.
There we go. But today I really wanted to speak to something that is very, very important. It's very critical in our lives in terms of being adults and being ones who try to guide and counsel and mentor young people. I want to talk about how do we treat young people in our organizations and our universities. What is happening? And I have three things on my mind. First, the very, very tragic situation around Jalen Hill. For those who don't know his story, he was a 6'10" basketball player, played 3 seasons at UCLA.
Yeah.
A lot of people know his name or slightly remember him because he was with LeAngelo Ball and Cody Riley. They were arrested in China on shoplifting charges back in 2017. And so he was suspended a year later from the team. He returned, he came back, and he played. And then more recently, he went missing. And they found his body in Costa Rica. No details in terms of what exactly happened, how he passed away. Wow. But I'm thinking about, as he stated, he posted on an Instagram video that he was suffering from anxiety and depression. And I'm very, very hopeful that family, the university, professionals in his life were helping him and counseling him. But it does bring attention and alarm to how are we treating our young people. And then I'm reminded of something that's more close to me, and that is the situation over in Chapel Hill, UNC. Rose Brown, former doctoral student in the Keenan Flagler Business School, and how she felt very, very pressured, uncomfortable, excluded, and she filed a lawsuit. And the lawsuit was against the dean of the school, who recently resigned, 3 other professors, and UNC's Board of Governors. And it is filed in federal court for racial discrimination. And so CNN has picked up the story. It's been local in chapelboro.com. The Indy, a lot of people are speaking about this and using it not necessarily to do, an expose on what's going on at Keenan Flagler Business School, but looking at, again, how are people being treated? Is there a sense of belonging? And then lastly, last night, it's been a while since I've been on campus working with undergrads, but as some of the listening audience knows, I always rave about the Carolina Sport Business Club. I'm the faculty advisor for that amazing group of young people. We had our first of this semester meeting last night, and to see their enthusiasm, their excitement about moving into the sport business space after their years at Carolina, and thinking about how we're treating them as adults in positions in sport business, whether it's media, marketing, finance, analytics, facilities. How are we providing opportunities for them so they can learn and make mistakes and groom themselves for success? So I want to say all that to say that we have to be reminded that we all have bias. Nobody's immune from this. We all have bias. As in, when we see someone who doesn't look like ourselves, the internal brain will start firing data to us. And hopefully it's all positive, it's all good, open heart, trusting. But for some people in our community, in the United States, there's the bias that pops up that can cause harm. It can cause pain. It can cause unnecessary death. Everything from jogging in a neighborhood, this racial imagination that Ahmaud Arbery was some type of threat, to Christian Cooper looking at birds in Central Park and Karen, calling the police on him. This this racial imagination as an understanding that we all have bias. And so the next step is, what are we going to do to interrupt that bias? What are we going to do to understand that we are indeed, as the Human Genome Project stated, 99.9% alike? 99.9% alike. But I like how one anthropologist put it, that we're not first cousins, we're not second cousins, we're somewhere between 45 and 50. And I wish we could all remember that when we see people that don't look like ourselves. So I have a little bit more to drop, but I'm going to pause there. Mistreatment of young people and what we can all do to be better.
We talked to Dr. Deborah Stroman, as we do each and every Thursday. Distro, I thank you for sharing those different vignettes with us and keeping us informed. I do want to go back to the MBA, Keenan Fackler School, a business school, which I am a graduate of, and I want to commend, and I may get his name wrong, Chiwanga. How you pronounce the last name? And Wuga, who's a graduate of MBA school. And is he a current faculty member now, or is?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
He's teaching now.
Right. So he wrote
African American student.
He wrote an article that I became familiar with that talked about the school in general, and as you mentioned, the leadership just resigned, and obviously included our own Dr. Stroman in that conversation about all the great work you've done. And you're like a sister to me, and I knew some of this, but I didn't know as detailed in terms of how you was treated at that business school in terms of with the leadership. And I was still blown away when I read the article. So give us a little snapshot of what I'm talking about to get people up to speed on what happened over there.
So without going through all the gory details or naming names,
right,
there is no doubt that for many women and people of color, surviving, navigating, and thriving in white spaces is very, very challenging. And again, for many of us, it's our choice.
Yeah.
Right. It is certainly our choice. But in terms of humanity and just the sense of having respect for you as a human being, there are things that take place in white spaces, in white organizations, that cause people to break down, cause people to go to have anxiety, depression, die by suicide, or just pack up their bags and say, I'm out of here.
Right.
And there is no doubt that I am not alone in being in spaces where the mistreatment just didn't add up. It just didn't add up.
Right.
And so, I've been in this work for so long, and hearing not only students but also faculty and staff talk about the gyrations and the extra hoops and bells that have to be rung to be viewed, to even be seen. And when I think about Rose Brown's case, everything from not being able to work on a subject that would lift her up and bring more knowledge to a particular area that has to do with Black people in the space of business, everything from being admonished for missing certain optional programs. But these things happen, and they happen all over the country. And perhaps, once again, with UNC being the poster child for harm and unnecessary, ugly treatment, perhaps we'll get more movement again. But that it is very, very, it's very, I'm not going to say surprised. I'm not alarmed, because when you've been in this work, that, this has been going on for decades, and some arguably could say all the way, for the past 400 some odd years, based on the history of our country. So I thank you for sharing, that I was named in the article in great detail. But I feel good about where I am right now, and I continue to, I believe, work hard and smart to make UNC Chapel Hill better.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Thank you for that.
And thank you for that. And
Thank you for that.
and they really pointed out how awesome and significant and impactful you were. And I attended banquets with the sports business opportunity that you had going over there and everything. And hopefully that may come back with the new leadership. We'll see. But I just wanted to highlight that while you was on today, Dr. Stroman.
Yeah. Well, thank you. The other piece and this is more into my racial equity work and workshops, and I'm very blessed to be on the Racial Equity Institute team as a national trainer, but helping us to understand that this isn't just high schoolers and college students. This goes all the way down to preschool.
That's right.
And how the bias is so present.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about innocent children like preschoolers. I don't know if you all knew this, but in the United States, we're suspending 250 preschoolers per day. 3 times the rate of K through 12 combined. And for what? Tantrums and noncompliance?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're 4-year-olds. Isn't that why we send them there to learn how to work well with others?
Right.
And then we see the racial inequities. White children are 43% of the preschool population, and 28% are suspended. Black little ones, black children, are 19% of the preschool population, and nearly 50% of all the suspensions.
Mm-hmm.
50%. And so I believe that is certainly flaws in adult decision making, and not always a child's behavior. And so when we have young people, brown and black children, experiencing this, and yes, they do experience it, there's research is very clear that racial bias, children feel and are affected by racial bias by ages 3 to 5.
That's
and
right.
by age 12, they're starting to formulate their beliefs. And so we basically have a decade to work with them and help them understand their learning process.
Right.
And if we're building in patterns of you're less than, you don't belong, lack of confidence, well, then it's no surprise that here we are today where we have students who aren't excited to graduate to 7th grade or shut down in high school.
That's
because
right.
this is what they're seeing and feeling. And then on the other side of this is that we have to understand, and the research is very clear. People can call me or contact me if they want the actual research. But white students are viewed as the anti-target. They get the benefit of the doubt.
That's correct.
They get the benefit of the doubt in these in cases in schools. The research says that white students are 31%. This is a case out of Texas, and it was bipartisan under Governor Rick Perry's administration, that white students are 31% less likely to receive a discretionary discipline. As in, when you're authorized by the school, whether that's the parking lot attendant, the teacher, the principal, if you're the coach, if you're authorized by the school, you're 31% least likely to discipline a white student. And yet white students are much more likely to commit serious offenses. Everything from bringing a firearm to school to committing a sexual assault on a high school or college campus or using drugs, whether that's cocaine, heroin, inhalants, prescription drugs, steroids, or ecstasy. And yet they get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Now, why should we care about this? Because they grow up. I'm talking real talk, #real talk. They grow up. And they show up on our high school or college campuses, or the FedEx building, or the spa, or the grocery store, or the 4th of July parade with an AR-15.
That's right.
Wow.
See, this is why we all have skinny in this. We all need to understand how we have to have more language, more learning, more sharing around racial equity. So this craziness about, oh, don't make our children uncomfortable. Oh, this stuff is not happening. What are you talking about? #let our children learn. They're already clued in on this.
Yeah.
I read a report last year that 2-year-olds are choosing playmates by race. They're conducting research on 6-month-old babies, measuring their responses to race by measuring cortisol levels and their length of their stare.
Wow.
So I just wanted to drop
length
this.
of their stare.
Yeah, length of the stare. So racism, racial equity work is not immune. Sports doesn't get a pass. I know everybody wants to say, oh, it's sports. All we care about is winning. No, you can't look at banking and finance. You can't look at media. You can't look at healthcare. You can't look at education and say all these racial inequities are only happening in those systems. No, they're happening in sports as well. And I think, Phoenix Sun, Starboard, that's another example. And so we have to think about how we can work on inclusion, how we can work on belonging and lifting everyone up if we care. If we truly care about one another.
That is.
Wow.
That is.
Outstanding. Well, Dr. Stroman, as always.
Yeah, you going back to back like the Lakers back in the day.
Yeah, but you are correct though. I mean, one of the things that I think a lot of people it gets lost on that is It's really about visuals. So things that look like you, things that act like you,
Length
things
of
that
the
sound
stare,
like
that's
you,
gotta
things
be.
that feel comfortable to you, you're more apt to provide a level of empathy, a level of caring, understanding, whatever you want to call it, right? So you're absolutely correct. When it comes to discipline, if I'm going to discipline someone that looks like me that I have some form of a chemical or emotional attachment to, it probably won't be as severe as one that I do not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's just the fact. And the fact of that is when you're not viewed as an equal or a human being or on the same level, it's very difficult for people to catch themselves in that process, and they have to be conscious about it. They have to be cognizant about it, and it has to be something that's talked about in order for people to go out and fix it, because it's going to happen because it's just natural. But you have to know better to do better. So the more people know about it, right, the easier it is for you to fix it and say, you know what, let me make sure I'm being purposefully fair about how I'm disciplining everybody across the board. So it's just about equity. That's why it's called DEI. That's why it's called inclusion, equity. That's why it's called all of those things, because it's really about being equitable and being fair.
I like that a lot.
No, you're absolutely correct. It's I'm very hopeful that in my lifetime we'll move the needle even further. And I know a lot of people, when you look at the data, because we have the stories, right? We have the narratives, people being harmed. But when you look at the data, it just makes it so much more compelling about the challenge that we're up against. But I have to remain hopeful. In fact, Brian Stevenson, a giant in the space,
Yes.
he says that hopelessness, that's the enemy of justice. And it's also been said that hopelessness is the cousin of despair. And when we think about some of the people who've gone before us and what they went through, we have to have hope. We have to continue to press on this and help people to understand their bias and understand that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, the bias, understand that everybody can have something. Stop this fear, this law of scarcity, that if I do something over here, it's going to take something away from you. There is more than enough. There's more than enough.
Yeah. Well, as always, Dr. Stroman, it's a pleasure talking to you. We're going to have to get out of here. And, man, I'm telling you, love this conversation.
Yes.
Absolutely.
This is outstanding.
Great, good stuff.
Yeah.
You all have a great day. I wish you all the best, continued love and success, and let's keep doing it.